That's why when I walk in and I see your quote, the piranha plant, the power star, I said I'm in the right place.
Welcome back to another episode of the Captain 501 broadcast. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's another guest episode, so of course I'm being joined with another incredibly talented Belizean guest. So to give you a bit of an introduction, this pianist, guitarist, composer, arranger, and band leader brings an interesting spin to the jazz music genre in Belize. He's performed throughout Belize as a solo instrumentalist, a band leader, and as a sideman. He's performed with other Belizean artists such as J. Cass, and he is a part of the Loreto Pelayo Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Captain 501 broadcast, none other than Loreto Pelayo.
It's so nice to be here, that's such a lavish vibe, I forgot that some of that stuff is up there, like the stuff with J. Cass. I think that was just on his first EP, actually. I think I played the intro on Interlude or something like that. I guess it sounds better on paper. Right?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, adds to your resume, your extensive resume. So, I want to start from the beginning. Where did you find your start in music?
I think the thing with music is that it's all around us all the time. Right, so from the time that we're born, we're kind of a victim of circumstance of sorts, Depending on where you grew up in the world, what your family is like, you hear different styles of music. So when I was growing up, I honestly just heard, I guess what was popular at the time, like in 2005, what was that? I don't know, like Shakira, Daddy Yankee, stuff like that. But I never would say that I had like a vested interest in that. But from I was a kid, I really just enjoyed staying home, keeping to myself, and playing video games. And so, from I was like 4 or 5, my aunt from the States bought me a Game Boy Advance SP. And so I'd always be playing that, a DS, 3DS, Wii. And so I was just very much a Nintendo fanboy. And so what came out of that was I fell in love with the music of the games. So while maybe other people would be putting on... I don't know, what do they listen to? Taylor Swift while they're studying? I would be putting on, the OSTs to these different games. And so to me, that was just the music that I really loved, like as a kid, growing up. And what that did was put me in kind of like a circle where I would look for covers of these songs and stuff like that. And I would see that there was a lot of people online doing different covers of video game OSTs. And so they would take these tunes and, add a different spin to it. And what was popular was doing jazz arrangements of these tunes. So I would go online and I would watch, this person is playing there's a great YouTuber, I think his name is Insane in the Rain Music. And it's really interesting with him because he started out just doing covers of video game music, and I believe recently Nintendo actually put him to do the music on Pokemon Legends Z8, which is a recent game on the Switch. So it's funny how that the fan to working on the actual project.
Yeah, that full circle moment.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And so all of these people kind of inspired me. Music of Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, and then the covers from people like him. I guess later there was like Patrick Bartley and a few other people who just were really into this music. So that was me. You could ask anybody from Jan's. That was what I was listening to, It was kind of my whole personality back in high school, actually. So, but I actually wanted to make my own video games as well. So, when I was at HACJC, I majored in CIS, Computer Information Systems, and then I went to UB and did a bachelor's in IT. So the initial idea was I loved video games so much that I just wanted to make my own. And so that didn't happen. But what was in my mindset as like a 15-year-old in Fort Farm was, okay, so I probably need to know how to program. I probably need to get better at art so I could do art for my own games. And I probably need to learn music so I could make music for my games. So that was kind of like my mindset as like a 15-year-old. It's like when you're like in primary school, like, I say what you want to be, and say astronaut. And I think most people who say that don't become astronauts.
I mean, true.
But at least one part of that kind of stuck, which was the music.
Yeah.
So I was 15 years old. I asked my mom to put me in piano lessons. So I went to Miss Sheila Genity, who lived close by to me. Did piano in Fort Farm. Funnily, like 2 months later, they sent out the SBA list. And for whatever reason, I decided to torment myself in Fort Farm and do 16 CXCs. And so one of those was music, And it's funny because back then, all the teachers were telling me, why are you doing this subject? It makes no sense, yada, yada, yada. But I think at the time, 16 CXCs meant that the government would have covered your 6-pound costs and stuff like that. So I did it, honestly, for maybe just the excitement of it at the time, to be honest. And one of those CXCs was music. And so in my first year of learning any music at all, I took that risk. I think I got like a grade 2 or something like that. But it's still surprising that I did comparatively well. And so that kind of just escalated my need to learn stuff like music theory, listen to a lot of different music, and stuff like that. I did the ABRSM examinations on piano. And so around that time, when I was maybe 17, 18, 19, I started to transition a bit more from just listening to video game music and trying to figure out, okay, there are elements in this music that I just really love, Like, how could I just figure out, like, what is the source? Like, where does this come from? Like, everybody says this thing is jazz, this thing is jazz, this thing is jazz, this thing is jazz. But just as, like, a common sense individual, you listen to it and say, okay, this is different. How are these two different things, but, use the same label?
Right.
And so, I just really dove into, like, the early history of the music, listening to the music from the 1920s, 1930s, 40s, 50s, up to the 60s, basically. And so the soundtrack of my life kind of shifted from, the music of Koji Kondo and whoever else to the music of John Coltrane, the music of Miles Davis, Duke Ellington. And so, if you notice, all of this is kind of like existing in kind of my own bubble of sorts. Yeah. Because, as a kid who like growing up playing video games and stuff, it's not like I'm gonna be, going out and say, oh, Sean Paul is coming to Belize, let me go hit up the Sean, right. Because that was just kind of not my niche,
right,
Right. And so, so I just started digging into this music, and the thing as well was that I didn't have anybody to play with, So I was taking piano lessons, I was playing at home, and so this feeling that there's like nobody else that I know that I could play with, led me to another idea, because what many of these people did on YouTube was that they would learn different instruments, record themselves playing each one, and then edit them together, right? And so I never ended up doing that, but I was always like forward thinking. So I'm like, okay, so I need to buy a drum kit, I need to buy this, I need to buy mics, and so I began just kind of accumulating gear, which in the future would end up paying off. But at the time it was kind of just, just like, I really want to do this thing. And it's just propelling me in that direction. And so years go on, I was playing piano, and I slowly started to just kind of interact with, well, what is the music scene like in Belize? At the time, I think I saw like a flyer on Facebook, and it was advertising like the Belize International Jazz Festival, something like that. And I just, decided to come out. They said there was a jam session or something, so I came out. I waited until the end because nobody said, would anybody like to come up to play? I just saw people. I guess the community is so small that, it's almost kind of ridiculous having a call for people to come up when nobody will come up, right? And so I was waiting for that, but so I went up to Carlos and I asked him if I could play, and then I played Take the A-Train or something. And then, that was, I guess, my first time, playing in front of people.
Right.
And then, next year, kind of the same thing. And throughout all this time, it's just a lot of listening to music, whatever. And then I go. Actually, before that, there's a lot of talk of the Belize National Orchestra right now, but many people forget that there was the the National Youth Orchestra of Belize that Nitch and Cadle Jr. did for like I think almost like a decade. He was working with that orchestra. I was never part of it, but I think he got a great guitar player by the name of Jacob Kelberman to come to Belize one year with his wife. Well, it wasn't his wife back then; it was his girlfriend. But now they're married. And then the next year they brought him again, and this time he came with 3 other musicians from the Juilliard School that's in New York City. It's one of the most prestigious music institutions in the U.S. with a very long history. So these are 4 great musicians coming to Belize to assist the orchestra. And I think I was playing at the Festival of Arts. I think Nietzsche was doing like a chord and voices thing for the first time. I was helping out and my friend James Sanker with some kids, and I guess at the time I was getting some performance experience, helping out James. Think the nice thing with James is that James introduced me into, I guess, the cultural element of music, right? So James was working with different local artists like Terry the Brockton Girl, and some other people. And so just being around them made me realize that there is that music doesn't just exist kind of in my personalized YouTube playlist.
Right.
That there is also like a living tradition of music that is unique to Belize. I was, not that I bring that up, James was exposing me to, particularly to Brockdown, which I eventually got quite a fondness for myself. But yeah, I was working with James Sanker on a project with some kids, and I saw this upright bass player on stage with the orchestra, and my young brain was mind blown because all this time I'm looking for a style of music which is jazz as it was played between like the 20s to the 60s. That's like a particular style. It's kind of like if let's say you are a Belizean, well, let's say you're there in the States, right? And you just want that authentic rice and beans, chicken and salad.
Yeah.
Right? And then you go and you say rice and beans on the menu. And then you get it and they're like white rice with black beans in it. And you say, this is not rice and beans. And so then
which has happened to me before.
so it's a perfect example. And so you as a Belizean, you will be like, no man, this is not rice and beans. This is not rice and beans. But then I say, yes, this is rice and beans. And I say, no. Or if you talk to like a Jamaican, they say, no, this is rice and peas. Yeah. So it's the same thing with this. It's like, I would say I come out of the school of thought that this era is what defines jazz, and that's kind of what it is. Everything else is kind of just broken off a different subgenre, just like a different thing. But the jazz is like 20, it's the rice and beans.
Yeah.
So the rice and beans right there. And so I'm here and I'm like, they don't got rice and beans. Yeah, I want this rice and beans. Just give me the rice and beans. Just give me that style of jazz. And I don't see it. And one of the hallmarks of this music is that the bass is often played with the upright bass.
Right.
It's the large instrument that resembles to some people a violin, but it's an upright bass. And I see this kind of white guy on an upright bass, and in my mind I'm like, is he from Belize? Does Belize really have a jazz bassist here? And so I'm watching him play, and then some girls at the back were like, can you play something for us? Can you play? And he starts playing a walking bass, and I'm like, what? Who in Belize is this? I later found out that he came from the Juilliard School and he was helping out the orchestra. His name was Felix Musselholm. I think he's from Denmark, actually. His uncle played with some of the greats back in the day, Eric Dolphy and some others. I actually have some records with his family on it, and he himself now plays with some great musicians like Brad Melda, a piano player, and Samara Joy, who is like one of the foremost jazz vocalists today. She's won like several Grammys, and so this guy at the time he was like probably 19, still in school, eventually become such a great and renowned bass player. Is at the Blaze helping out the orchestra, but and so me and my friend go up to him and we're just asking him about the bass, and he's like, um, if you really want to know some more about the bass, we're having a rehearsal tomorrow. You should come. And so my friend did make it because I think he lives all the way up north in a village. Um, but I show up, and maybe I spend only like 10 minutes talking to him before the rehearsal starts. He's showing me stuff about the bass, and I'm in ecstasy because finally, this thing that I've been looking for, I've been yearning for, has come to me. How is it? You know? Um, and then I also get to meet the piano player that was with them, I believe, um, the guitar player that's with them, the drummer. And it's so funny, I wasn't even part of the orchestra, but this piano player, he's like, "You play piano, right?" And I'm like, kind of. I've only been playing like for a few years. Like, okay, so sight read this, and I'm not part of the orchestra, and he throws me in this rehearsal saying, sight read this, and it's just kind of like an overwhelming experience for someone who has like never really been part of like a music community, who never came out of like a certain um I guess background. Because if you look at pretty much most other um I guess instrumentalists in the scene, they come out of one of a few backgrounds. There's some people who really just grew up playing steel pan, and that's like a very communal thing. You are part of a steel band, you have so many friends in there, it's a group activity. Or you go to Palo Alto School of Music, you get to know the other students, you're part of something like that. These days, people go to SJC, JC, but for me, it was always kind of isolated in that sense. So getting to meet these guys was just like mind blowing. Um, I went backstage afterwards and I played piano, and Felix was playing bass, and he was just I was saying, I really want to play this music in Belize, but who will I get to play the bass? Who will I get to play the drums? Does anybody even want to hear this music? And he's just like, man, if you love it, all of this will work out. And at the time, I was such a doomer. I'm like, he's just saying this. He doesn't get it. He's not from Belize. But that he motivated me. I kept in touch with the guitar player Jacob Kelberman since then, and I think that was just really like a big spark for me. You know, the thing with motivation, I personally feel, is that it's hard to be motivated when something doesn't exist in real life, to push you. So, like for this music, I feel like if I never got some taste of it in person rather than just YouTube, I would have never really had that push to just keep at it. Maybe it would have faded away or something like that. But I think that was just like spending time with and I think I sat in on a few of their gigs, like at Radisson and somewhere else. But it was just such a great experience for me that a few months later, I went to UB. I was just at the time I picked up the guitar. Um, it's funny. Before that I played the ukulele. I don't know why. It was just a strange choice. I was really attracted to it at the time, but I made the switch to guitar. I said, okay, I'm going to play guitar. No idea why. It just kind of happened. I'm going to keep up the piano, play the guitar. Maybe because it's just more portable. And so I would take my guitar to UB with me every day in Belmopan. And so I would have to wake up 5 a.m., bathe, catch the bus, go to Belmopan and come back. So I'm like, if I'm doing this large commute every day, might as well I have music with me. So I'd be taking my guitar around campus, trying to learn tunes, just trying to get better. And I think the president of the student council at the time saw me, and she was like, "You play music?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we're having an event. Um, I think it was for Judge Price Day or something like that. At UB, and we wanted there to be a performance at the start. Uh, do you have a band that could play? And I'm like,
would have a band, you know? And so one thing led to the next. I came out of class, and one of my friends, old primary school friends who was at UB with me, he was like, bro, a guy with a big violin just walk in. I'm like, what? Big violin? You mean the upright bass? Never. No, nobody there to play this thing that UB. Come on. And I go down and I meet the first person who would become a key member of my band, which was Christopher DeShiel. He has a PhD in something English related. I should ask him about that. But he's a lecturer at UB. He's a lecturer at UB, and he plays the upright bass. And I saw him with the bass, and I just walked up to him and I'm like, "Would you like to play jazz with me?" And I showed him some ideas on the bass, because I think at that time he mostly just played stuff for Palote, just following what like the sheet music says, not really. Because if you're not playing with a band, like why would you even learn some of these things, right? So I talked to him. He wants to play. I'm in like the hallway, and this guy Stuart, a great singer, walks up to me and he's like, "I want to sing with you." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I find this next guy who is a guitar player, and I'm like, "So I already play guitar, so I don't need a next guitar player. But you want to learn the drums?" And so this yes, this unlikely team, and I had the drums because I had already bought drums, or parts of the drums, because like I said before, I wanted to it never ended up that way, but I wanted to just like play every instrument and edit it together and stuff like that. So I kind of had a lot of equipment just in my pocket ready to pull out for something like this. And so we played the gig. I thought it went pretty well, and then at the time I was part of this it's almost like a IT club, but I think it's a bit more professional than that at UB Cadle. That's what I say, the ACM UB student chapter. So I was the webmaster or something. But and I think my IT professors noticed this. They're like, "Dude, you're in an IT program, but all you talk about is music." It's true. It's like everything is music. I think for one of my class projects, I made like a talent discovery app, where, or like a event app where you could see what events are happening. So everything at even then, it was just kind of like leading towards like music, music, music. Is because when you love something, you can't help it. You can't help it. You can't battle it in. And so, using the little influence I had in this club, I said, you know what we need to have? We need to motivate the students with an event. And we will call this Jazz and Java. And that was kind of a pun, because Java is a programming language, but people also use it to refer to coffee. And so it was kind of like a coffee and jazz socialization event for this club. And so that was an excuse to play with the band. I think UB actually got us to play for their matriculation ceremonies. Gave us a nice honorarium, and so this is just like big motivation. 2019, we're just starting up. This unlikely quartet arrives, and we're doing something. Like, I'm doing what I always wanted to do. Like just a few months ago, I was being all doomer to these guys from the States, and somehow, almost like an act of God, everything kind of falls in place, because I asked myself, what if I never went to UB? Honestly, I didn't want to go to UB. I wanted to be like those guys who went to Taiwan or States or whatever. But I found myself at little old UB, National University. I ended up liking UB a lot. Um, what if, what if a lot of things? What if I wasn't with James Anker that night to meet Felix? These things just kind of lined up almost providentially for me. And yeah, so one of the biggest things though that really hit us hard was we're having a good time, good vibes only. Um, and 2020, COVID, coronavirus, the Wuhan coronavirus, that's what it was called at the time. Man, and I was like, nah, this thing is in China. It's not gonna hit Belize, and then it hits America, and I'm like, no, 15 days to slow the spread. You know, it's only 2 weeks. We'll be back, and I never set foot for class at UB campus again. So in that sense, um, the band didn't dissolve because we did several gigs after that. Just kind of, again, thanks to James Sanker, kind of keeping me active with things that he was doing, so I would find ways to put my band in it. But COVID was just like, it really demotivated me in that way, because here everything is lining up, and then COVID, it takes away school, it takes away friends, it takes away music, opportunities for music. And so during this time, um, I remember us really trying to keep up stuff with the band. I think there was a competition um, held by Carlos and Karen at the time, uh, and one of my friends who eventually started to drum, who replaced the drummer who wasn't a drummer. So this one was actually a drummer. Um, he was busy during this time, or I think maybe he was afraid of catching the COVID, and so he didn't want to come out to drum. So I got a recommendation that this guy by the name of Josh Herrera would be a great person to drum with me, And so I DM him, I send him tunes that we're gonna work on, and I get a quick response. He says, "Sure." He shows up at the place where we're practicing, and he plays, and I was just like blown away. I had no idea that somebody in Belize could play so well, and so during this time of COVID, where we kind of found a new trio of sorts, myself, Christopher on the bass, and Josh on drums, and that trio has effectively stayed the same since 2020 to now. So in that way, we've been playing since 2020, but the band started in 2019. And so during this time, um, we're just trying to play. For me, the most important thing in playing this style is uh, listening to the music, right? Because the thing with other styles of music, like soca, you hear it all about. Maybe even pop, you hear it everywhere. And so jazz is the style of music that everybody is kind of confused on what it is. And so if you're not listening to the music, when you play, you won't kind of get how it's supposed to sound. And so I always encourage the members in my band to just like listen to the records, listen to the records, listen to the records, because we're in a odd position of sorts where, and people always come after me for saying stuff about jazz because they say, oh, he thinks he's an authority on them. It's like, no, 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 no. Like, I just listen to the music, and if you listen to the music too, you will realize the same things. But the thing with people in the US, which is why I feel like I take a different approach to the whole jazz thing in Belize versus when I'm in the US. Because in the US, you go to high school, they have jazz band, You go to college, they have jazz programs. You could hear jazz at a lot of places, right? And a lot of the older people listen to jazz, and so because of that, because jazz is American music, they don't have the problem that we have in Belize when it relates to this music. It's kind of the same way like most people in America have probably never heard Brock Down before. They have no idea what that's supposed to sound like. Yeah. So if they try to play it, it will just sound kind of cringe, to be honest. And so it's the same way vice versa, and it's just simply understanding that this is a music that is kind of foreign to us, but jazz has like a certain universal spirit, because jazz comes out of struggle, jazz comes out of oppression, and jazz is a kind of a yearning for freedom, in a style of the music. And so I think those are universal concepts. So it's not something to say, oh well, it's American music, so why are we playing it here? I guess we could get into some of that later. But yeah, but I would say 2025 has kind of been a generational run for my band, in the sense that I started the year saying that, okay, we need to kind of be a bit more serious about the music that we're playing. And I guess to backtrack a bit more, Jacob Kelberman, who I previously met in 2019, invited me to Philadelphia in late 2023, I believe, to play, right? And so he got together a bunch of local musicians in Philly that has like a very vibrant jazz scene, and it was almost like a build your own band. He's like, so what instruments do you want to play? And I'm excited. It's like, you mean like I could pick who I want to play with? It's like, yeah, why not? And so I'm like, okay, I want this drummer, I want a piano player, I want a trombone player, alto sax, and I got to pick the tunes that we're gonna play, and that was just such an amazing experience. I brought some of my original compositions, and they just brought it to life. I think a few months before that, James always helping me out, put me in a business of music program that I think who was doing it? Beltrade, I think. I think some other people were in. I think Nello was in there, and some other people. And one of the aims of this project was to come up with 3 original pieces of music. And so at this time, I said, you know what, I kind of want to dive into a bit of the Brock Dong influence. And so I spent maybe like a week just exclusively listening to Mr. Peters, like nothing else. And because I didn't want to say, oh, this is Brock Dong when like it doesn't feel like Brock Dong. So I listened to it. I'm like, what kind of makes this, like what kind of ties this whole thing together? How could I write something like this that's not just copying it, but that's in the same style? That's like, if Mr. Peters was still alive and he was writing more music, what would that might sound like? And so I wrote a tune. I call it Please for Shilling, which kind of reflects all of our lives. We're all kind of saying Please for Shilling in our own way. Yeah, and so I played that in Philly, and 2025 last year. During this time, I was getting to know more people in the jazz scene. Like one person who I got in touch with was Nathan Graybill. He is a YouTuber known by the name Saxologic, and so we became friends online through Zoom, through a program that I was a part of. That he was kind of one of the mentors on the program. And we just had a lot of fun talking about video games, life, different things. And at one point, I just asked him, "Would you come to Belize?" Like out of the blues, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll come to Belize." And so that was step one. And so I've never done this stuff before. I've never organized an event, but now I'm going to do a concert at the Bliss, right? So I reach out. I think it was to Kim at the Bliss, and she and Jillian, they were so nice. They helped me out. Told me what I need to do, what I need to get done. I spent probably from January to April just advertising, selling tickets. And so that put me in like a new space, because before I would spend more time just working on the music, but now I have to balance working on the music and having a viable event, because if the event fails, I can't have a next one, right? And so it's all marketing, and all of this is basically done just by me. The other band members help a bit in sales, and so, but the biggest push kind of comes from myself. So I have to wake up every day telling myself, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And that was just my life for that time. And then the concert comes, and again, it's just like this feeling like, wow, we're doing the thing that we always wanted to do. We're playing this style. And then after that, I'm like, let's do this again in like 3 months, and let's bring Russell Hall. And Russell Hall he's an amazing bass player in his own right. He's released like 5 albums of sorts. He was born in Jamaica. I really love his story. He was born in Jamaica, kind of a child actor in a way, in Kingston, but in like farmland. He said, and at 13 he moves to Florida, and then picks up the upright bass, and now is one of the leading bass players in New York. So here you got this Caribbean guy born to humble beginnings, moves to the US in his teens, and basically dominates the jazz bass scene. So just his story, I wanted to play with him. So I reached out to him. Surprisingly, he agreed. We set a date, and this kind of caused a bit of a issue because we had to move the venue from the Bliss to Ramada because he was playing with Wynton Marsalis, who is like he's a very prominent figure in the jazz scene in New York, and so it's like if Wynton is asking you to do a gig, you have to do it. Yeah. And so I was like, oh man, and at this point I've already sold some tickets and stuff like that, but it ended up working out. We moved it to July 4th. No specific reason why, no relation to the date. Russell came to Belize and he just kind of changed or not necessarily changed, but really cemented my perspective on the music, because all he was talking about was love of the music, love of the music, love of the. That was just the theme of everything. We are swimming in a waterfall, in a lightning storm. This guy got on like so much ring spanner, and we're talking about music. We're not worried we are get struck by lightning. Me, Nathan, and Russell were floating in the water. Well, not me. I can't swim, so my toes were kind of just bouncing up. No, I think I had a floaty around me. We were just talking about love of the music, and so it's funny, on that experience with him in Belize, I was mostly talking to him is what really changed my playing. He said, you need to get the blues in your playing. You need to understand the history of your instrument. And so that's kind of like what I really went after. And then after that, this great saxophone player and bass player, Ryan Devlin and Ian Ashby, I brought in October, and that was another, just great experience, because he is one of the people I feel like really embody the music of John Coltrane, which is a player that I really love. And so getting to play a lot of this stuff that I just can't with my band, because maybe like the bass player or whoever might not be ready to play certain tunes. It's like I brought their bass player, this saxophone player, and I could experience this music and share it with everybody else. But at that time, at that third concert, I began to get a lot of controversial remarks online, right? Because I'm very much passionate about promoting this idea of not necessarily defining what jazz is, but just kind of saying like, this is what the music is commonly understood to be. Everything else is kind of an outlier, like we talked about the rice and beans thing, or it's in a way, if you have to think about it philosophically, kind of, it's like, what makes something something, right? Aristotle, I believe, kind of has this idea of there being like the substance and the essence, or no, substance and accidents, either essence and accidents, something like that. Basically, what is necessary to make something something, and what is kind of just a byproduct. It's kind of like well, what makes this a pants? I guess it has two legs, could go through it, but the fact that it's gray doesn't make it a pants. It just makes it a gray pants. And so you could say the same thing with jazz. Well, what are the elements that make something jazz? And that's kind of difficult, because music changes over time. It depends on the region. It depends on the players, because even players in the same time would play different styles. And I understand this, but then some people will like stretch it to the extreme and say something that is so radically cut off from the rest of the tradition is jazz. Or what might happen is that people would say that this one outlier of like a style represents jazz. And what I'm trying to say is, okay, the music needs to be centered around these ideas. Everything, like, play what you want. Like, actually like some of the stuff where the people play, my critics. But I'm just saying, like, it's an issue of labeling, I guess. And that's all it is. But I was getting a lot of like remarks, like who can say what is jazz and what jazz isn't? And then there was like a whole pseudo boycott of my concert, and it was like drama every single day, honestly. So imagine you are working on the Captain 501 broadcast, and every episode after that, every day you open up Facebook to a negative remark, you might just be discouraged, you know. And that's kind of the problem with social media, is that you could hide behind words, sit behind your desk, wake up, drink your coffee, and say, who this Bali think he, da, 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 da. You know. And so that was kind of the what I was working with, you know, while planning these concerts, because you would expect people to be more receptive of it. But, you know, that's just what it is. It's kind of a struggle, but it cements the idea that I love this music. And so because I love this music, I won't back down from what I'm doing because of, you know, scuffles online. So that's kind of like a very long history of just you know, what I've been doing in the music.
Season 2 of the Captain 501 broadcast is brought to you by the National Institute of Culture and History, NICH. NICH is Belize's premier cultural institution dedicated to empowering contemporary and traditional creatives, nurturing their talents, and recognizing their roles as catalysts for change in our communities, safeguarding both our tangible and intangible heritage. The NICH vision to create a Belize that embraces and promotes our cultures, our values, our identity, our prosperity in our global community is brought to life through a diverse array of programs and initiatives. You can learn more about the resources provided by NICH by visiting the Museum of Belize or the Museum of Belizean Art located in Belize City, the various houses of cultures located countrywide, as well as visiting nichbelize.org or other websites and tools such as the 501 Academy and Access 501. So now you briefly talked about it, but in a country where jazz isn't the prominent genre that you hear all the time, I'm sure that, to not sugarcoat it, you've definitely had a bit of opposition or people tell you, you know, try another genre or something like that. You know, what is it that really drives you to stick behind the jazz genre?
Again, I think it's love of the music, because when you love something or someone, you can't just let it go. It's like, I'm sure everybody has had girlfriends that their parents say, you know, if they're with this guy, and you don't listen to it. Has there ever been someone when their parents tell them that, oh, I don't like this girl like this. Oh, okay, mommy, make her break up with her right now. You know, I don't think that's our thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and so it's the same thing with love of the music, because there's just something about this style that when it's done right, makes me very happy. Right. It makes me enjoy the music. It makes me just want more and more. And so that, as like a feeling, as a marker of the music, like, why wouldn't I do it? And then why wouldn't I want to share this with other people? You know? It's like, there's nothing wrong with other styles of music, but everybody likes something different, you know? Mm-hmm. And the thing with the opposition as well, sometimes you have to ask yourself, is there any merit in this criticism? Because another problem I notice in Belize is that sometimes when people get criticism, they throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So they will get criticism and I say, oh, this was criticism, and then like ignore, you know, what the message is being said. Right. You know, but sometimes I get very constructive criticism from friends, from, you know, different people, musicians, non-musicians, because you have some people who say, well, this person, I know I'm a musician, so I know I listen to them, but we're kind of playing for them, right? So there needs to be kind of like a balance between like what I know, you know, should be there, and kind of like, okay, what is the reason this person might not be experiencing it the same way? Like, how could we work on that? And so, you know, like I've been incorporating more rock down, you know, stuff into the repertoire. Like we play Shall I Baby, but we also take solos on it. And so that's kind of like a bridge between, you know, playing what we love and playing something that's more relatable for the audience. And it's also not done as just a means to be commercial, because that's one thing I'm completely opposed to. Commercialism, just being fake. Some people call it being afraid to be cool. I don't like when people... One of the biggest things I dislike are people who are fake, people who are not true to themselves, right? And so because I do stuff because I love it. I will never do something because I'm coerced to, because somebody tells me that I should do this because I think it will be successful. I do stuff because I love it, and that's it, right? And so whenever I notice, like, those people are only being dishonest, fake, it kind of irritates me. Russell Hall calls it being a werewolf, right? Because there's kind of like this strive for just loyalty and honesty and good vibes within the pack. And so it's kind of like that. Because I've heard, like I said, different criticisms that are completely valid. Some of them you can't do anything about it right now, because the thing with this music is you kind of have to listen to it live to just understand more. You have to play it a lot to get better, and you have to play it people better than you, which is why I have to bring people here to play with us. Like, but it's also not like when I bring Russell Hall, it's not a Russell Hall concert. It's Loreto Pelayo Quartet featuring Russell Hall. Why? Because I think Belizeans should really pride themselves in the people who are here. Because there's also that tendency to say, oh, well, Belize not got nothing good, so we want foreigners. It's kind of weird, because when I sell the ticket, people just kind of want to come for the foreigners. But I will never say that this is like it's not a foreign show. This is my band playing as we've always played, but someone is joining us. Yeah, and so I think that for our Belizean artists, I wish that they would get more recognition for what they do, because the mere act of being a creative in this economy is takes a lot of bravery. Like even your podcast, who wakes up saying that well, a lot of people say they want to be a podcaster, but few do it, right? And few do it to this effect. You got all this stuff. It's a vibe. And so it's the same thing with this. A lot of people might say they want to do this or do that, but you have to have an innate love, something that nobody can take away from you, to just keep moving on. So
yeah. I mean, your story is very inspiring to hear about, not conforming to what society expects of you. And I think that that's very good advice for creatives in general, not to submit to the norm or what's considered the norm or popular at the time. So yeah, I think that's really good advice for people to take away from this episode. So you and your band, you found a way to combine Belizean culture, but also in the spirit of jazz, as you mentioned with the Shalai Baby and Mr. Peters and things like that. As a fellow creative, I know what it's like to spend hours, in the editing room, in the writer's room or whatever, coming up with something new. So what does the arrangement process look like when you're coming up with those kinds of projects or instrumentals?
I think for me, there's a few things. I'm a mega procrastinator. I think Nello came on and said the same thing about himself. And so yeah, I think that comes from just having so many ideas at once that you can't just stick to one thing. And so I need a few things. I need a deadline, and a real deadline, right? So one of the things with that Belize music project was there was a deadline that we needed to record by, and so I'm like, okay, only Mr. Peters, and then the thing with music is that you are always receiving information, and then subconsciously or consciously you kind of bring that back out, right? It's kind of like English as a language. I'm sure writers, well, you never know, because nowadays things very avant-garde, but wake up and like say, I will invent a new word today, a neologism or whatever. No, you read previous works, and those previous works become innate in you, that you could create new ideas from what has already been made. It's like we speak English, Creole, whatever, and we're not inventing new words all the time. And so what we say is kind of it comes from just our experience, our surroundings, what we're reading, what we're listening to. And so it's the same thing with the music. It will not, if I'm listening to a lot of Mr. Peters, I will naturally kind of hear stuff in that style. if I'm listening to a lot of John Coltrane, I'll naturally just hear more stuff in that style. If I'm listening to a lot of Bud Powell, I'll naturally begin to hear stuff in that style. When it comes to a process, I think really and truly, a lot of the ideas come very quickly, but it's not like on command, I guess, because I'd need like a real reason to get this done. But the interesting thing with jazz is that, you know, for a lot of this small combo work, a lot of this is just kind of figured out on the spot. And then what kind of happens is we notice what works or doesn't work on the gig. And then the next gig, we either do more of the same or be like, you know, this didn't really work out last time. Let's try something different. And so I think in that way, it just kind of works. So, but you know, as it relates to like the Shall I Baby, Please for Shilling, Mr. Peters type stuff, one of my big things was I kind of wanted the drums on that to mimic the different parts of the drums that that the boom and chime band were playing, you know. So maybe the snare drum. I told Josh. I think at the time he wanted to play with sticks. I'm like, no, one brush, one stick. So the brush is kind of like it's like a frayed wire coming out, and so you get like this softer attack because that kind of like a broom, like a mini broomstick in a way. So if you could imagine that, and so you could get like different songs, and so I said, okay, this could kind of imitate the jawbone, and you know, this other part could be this, and so it's just like a softer song, but you know, with still the elements of what makes that style of music, and it's really been something that you know, some days I just wake up and I'm like, I kind of just want to listen to Mr. Peters today, which is something I wouldn't maybe do 10 years ago. So I'm, you know, grateful that I've, you know, again formed a legitimate interest in the music, that I'm not just playing it because people say it's commercial, because that's what I've heard. And so, you know, this is actually very commercial. You could do a lot with this. And I'm like, I guess, but you know, I don't really care, you know.
For the love of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see the future of jazz in Belize?
You know, that's an excellent question, because this is like a very long-term vision. So hopefully in 2050, if the Captain 501 broadcast is still around, then you'll see that hopefully the Loreto Pelayo trio is still around, and maybe even, you know, different groups. Where do I see it in the future? That's a very difficult question, because there's many different things we're attacking at once. Fact number one, Belize is underdeveloped when it comes to just music education, music appreciation. Again, this is the difference between the US and Belize. You could find a piano in many homes in the US. You learn music in school. And so a lot of people who, even if they pick up jazz later in their life, they're going in with this prerequisite knowledge already there, right? And so with Belize, you start music at 15, 17, 20, 25. It's like, what prerequisite knowledge? You know? And some instructors might get upset by that remark, but you know, a tree by its fruits. And where are the fruits? Yeah. You know, that's it. And so I realized that like there was a negative comment on a video recently saying, why is he saying that he's the only band in Belize playing jazz? Jazz was always here in Belize. Response: where can they play so I could show up? Who are these bands? What are the tunes so I could learn and join? You know, because it's gaslighting to say, because I don't care about ego, I don't care about being the first or the only or whatever people think that I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I love the music. It's not here. I want it to be. Because if it was, I'd play with whoever is playing it, right?
I was gonna say too, it kind of reminds me of, you know, like how the fans or the stands of today, they tend to keep their favorite artists, because I think the thing with jazz music is that since it's such an older genre, that the older generation, because they know it to be one certain thing, they kind of keep it, and they don't want, like the younger people to put their spin on it, or they want it to remain that certain way.
And I think, now you bring that up, and I kind of remember what I was saying before as well. Yeah, you're totally right, because a lot of people who share these sentiments come out of a very specific age group. And so their perspective of what jazz is kind of might be influenced by what was happening in the 70s and 80s, which already was a big departure from the entire late 60s going onward was kind of all about dismantling tradition, sexual revolution, feminist movement, a whole bunch of things come about as to say, okay, we're separating from what came before, and there was also civil rights and all of that, and some good things came out, some bad things, but that also affected the music, so people were going to radically different styles at that time. And so if you come out of an era where you listen to that and that was being called jazz at the time, in a way I can't blame you for thinking that, but it kind of shows a lack of a wider appreciation of the music. But yeah, point one, Belize is just needs development in terms of that. And that's not something that you could write a proposal and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, problem solve. No, that's kind of like a long-term thing. Issue number two, you need people playing to motivate others to play. And so that's kind of a big thing that I see just with myself, is that I had to see other people play to just really get that spark to play. So my dream is that people might see Nathan here and say, I want to play saxophone, I want to play upright bass, I want to play jazz guitar, I want to play jazz drums. You think that they just wake up and go up on YouTube and say, oh, I want to play jazz drums now? No, this music requires people to play in a band. And so if there's no band to play with, why? Why learn any of this stuff? Even Christopher, who was playing upright bass, is like, why learn how to play a walking bass? Who will I play this with? And then the next thing, venues. Venues need to be more accommodating. Thankfully I've worked with so many great venues. Like Racino's Wine House has had us a few times. A few venues in San Pedro. The Belize collection, has had us play at several of their resorts. But my main thing is that and this is one of the goals I brought up with my band for this year. I want to ensure that every month there's at least one gig we have that normal everyday people could come to for low cost or free, right? Because I detest playing for tourists. Honestly, I don't want to feel like the cage monkey. And when they come, they come with certain expectations, and they could bring bad vibes or whatever. And so it's kind of the truth of it. And so what? And the next thing is like, why will you just give like a worse version of music from their country? It's like if we went to New York and then we find like some guy to play broke down, but as good as the Belize broke down. It's like, why even do that? And so my point isn't like, I don't want to be turned into the guy who plays the San Pedro for tourists, the piano bar people. A lot of people do that. And if that's what you enjoy and if that's what you need to make your living, kudos to you. But I'm after something else. I want Belizean people to be receptive. In that way, I'm a nationalist. Belize first, because this is where I live. This is where I was born. I don't plan to move anywhere else, ever. And so with that in mind, I could say, okay, how can I make Belize a better place within like what my skill set is? And it's just, to bring this music, because whenever we play somewhere, a lot of people are excited by it. Just the fact of like a small combo band playing this music, it's not something that's very common these days. I've heard from people that maybe in the 80s and 90s it was a lot more common to see. But the fact of the matter is, you go to a restaurant, the most you're going to see, honestly, is like a single person or a duet playing with backing tracks, which is not the same thing, and so I guess when it comes to my vision for the band and for Belize is I just want people to be receptive to it and to have access to it, because I think everything else will come with time. There are other people in the music scene who are working diligently to ensure that there is music education in primary and secondary schools. That's their thing. um you know but from my point of view, what is the next problem? A lot of people say music as like, when I hear these things from parents, it drives me nuts, but you can't tell them about it, because they want their children to learn music, but they don't want them to be musicians. You see what I say? So you could learn music as a way to boost your IQ. You could learn music as a way to like show the other kids that you better than them or whatever. A lot of more richer parents think like that. You could put them in there because it's fun. Oh, it's relaxing. I've never, I don't crazy. It's relaxing. Um, but oh, you want like play guitar full time? You crazy? You want to be broke? You want to bring shame to your family? No, people don't want that. So, okay, you put music in schools. Oh, why? Because if students learn music, they perform better. Who cares? Who cares if you perform better because you play music? Like, that's kind of not the point. Like, music is not so that you could do better in a math. If that happens, great. But how about you like play stuff, you do stuff, you be creative. That's what I care about. And so I think that focusing exclusively on music education, I think that's a good thing, and I would never say that they should stop. But you should also think about, well, what's the end goal of this? Okay, so we have music education, people play the Lee recorder, whatever. They could read our stuff, I guess. But you need motivation to play, and I think that just comes from seeing, oh, this band is playing, this band is playing, this guy is doing this guy is doing that. And so when you see that, when you see somebody do something, everybody like, oh, I could do that too, or I could do something like, it's just a natural thing. There's nothing bad in that. And so I think that if my band could provide anything, it's just like one path for people to look and say, these guys are doing something, can I do that too? But in an earnest way, in like something that's true to themselves. Because looking at my band and saying I can do that too doesn't mean that you necessarily need to have a jazz band. You could say, okay, what I love rock. Maybe I could do a rock band. I love soul. I love R&B. I love blues. Whatever it might be. Because I feel like every style of music has something that's kind of true to just that style. And you should just dive into what you love. I will never tell somebody who not really care about jazz that you need to stop what you like and just care about jazz. It's like, find what you like and do it. Whether that might be singing or but for me, I just I go into things that might be uncommon, and so if people also begin to like it because they're exposed to it, then that's good. If I could spark like a genuine interest in the music. So, yeah.
Okay, now I have another segment. You knew that this one was coming, right?
So is this the quiz? I'm afraid. I'm scared.
Not necessarily a quiz, but just a game to get to know you a little bit better. Okay. All right. This one is Belizean this or that.
Okay.
All right. So not too challenging. This one doesn't have a grade.
There's no wrong answers.
Exactly. There's no wrong or right. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna give you two options for each question, and then your response is just basically which one you prefer more. All right. So first one, Coke or Red Fanta?
Coke. Anybody who knows me knows that you always see me with a Coke in my hand. No, I wish Bowen would sponsor me, because I would got Coke on the stage. I got giant Coke bottle at my concerts at the Belize. But Coke. I'm a Coke aficionado. If they don't, then I will have to shout out my cola, I guess. I've tried it. It's weird. I go in between liking it and thinking it's kind of weird. Maybe it's just. But
Which one you said?
my cola, you don't know about it.
No, I haven't tried that.
You know, it's so crazy because the bottle says Belizean's favorite, but I don't think we had a poll to determine if it's our favorite or not. I just see that like the supermarkets and so on. It's like my cola, Belizean's favorite. It's like shilling cheaper than Coke, I think.
Oh well, I need to try that. No,
But I like honestly, but you had a good dichotomy with Coke and Red Fanta because if I had to pick a Fanta, it would be Red Fanta. The tourists said that it just tastes like a bunch of sugar, but I love it.
I like the Red Fanta.
The Red Fanta is amazing. You know, that's why when I walk in and I see your Coke, the Piranha plant, the Power Star, I said I'm in the right place. So.
Okay, next one. Kikaka or Placencia?
Placencia, and I'll tell you why. Best place to me, Tutti Frutti, the gelato place. That alone destroys Kikaka. So now, Placencia has a much better beach. So long and it's stretched. The resorts are fantastic, honestly. Sunset, beautiful. Kikaka just doesn't. It just doesn't stand up to Placencia. Placencia. And here's the thing, right? It's all about the journey, right? And so now you can't just say Kikaka or Placencia. You have to say boat from Belize City to Kikaka versus road trip from Belize City to Placencia. And that road is just beautiful, especially on the time of the day, and good time to listen to music, conversations. On the boat does boom, boom, boom. And I'm going to Mangrove, so
Good point, fair point. Alright, next one, Dokun or tamales?
That's a good question. Dokun meat or no?
Oh, okay, Dokun meat.
It depends, because sometimes the chicken kind of nasty and depending who make it. So I have to choose one. Tamales, I guess.
Okay, alright.
But the thing with Dokuno is that it's cleaner to eat. Like you can just sit on the side of the street,
right?
They wait and eat it, but it's kind of difficult to sit on the side of the eat. I sit on the side of the street and eat what tamales.
Yeah.
Way more messy.
Yeah.
So I think Dokuno more portable, especially that without the meat.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. All right, another one: lemon pie or jam roll?
Lemon pie. But there's a great history of a jam roll man outside the SJC. So there's a sentimental value to that. But maybe the difficulty of obtaining lemon pie might has affected my decision to go with lemon pie. But I love lemon pie. But I don't really like too much of the VM thing that up, whatever that is. I just like the pie. So a lot of times I was like,
or like the white. The
cream or whatever. I don't know.
But it's like whipped cream or no, I don't think that whipped cream, but like
something egg or something.
Yeah. When they like whisk it up. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I know like it's sweet, give me like a headache, so I just knock it off.
And you just prefer the pie, so
yeah.
Makes sense. Alright, next one. San Pedro or Cayo?
Now what you call Cayo, because that had been contested. You mean San Ignacio?
Okay, let's go San Ignacio.
San Ignacio, so my wife is from San Ignacio, so I'm biased, I guess. San Ignacio has, and again, road trip. Dagi Road from Belmopan to San Ignacio is good. Not really the one from Belize to Belmopan, but after that, you get to see the mountains, the spirals. You might drive off and crash depending how you go. But San Ignacio is beautiful. It's amazing. I don't really like San Pedro, especially when you have to travel with equipment, tiny golf carts and it rain I remember I got there for Christmas and I had a golf cart and I get splashed on the way to the gig just from like golf cart, I think the thing with San Ignacio is it's beautiful. Have a nice, Burns Avenue. I love it, just like this little vibe where you walk around. The Belize Bank looks so pretty. What do you think name? Coffee de los Mayas or whatever. Every time I go there, I make sure I get from there. I'm not sponsored, I swear.
But they can.
Yeah, you could.
They could. Right. And then I have the last one. Do you prefer go snorkeling or climb a Maya ruin?
Can I choose neither?
Oh, really?
So I can't swim. So you might say,
oh, this is why this man is not like he can't swim.
I mean, I know that even if I could swim, I honestly think the beach in Placencia is a lot better. If we go back to that question. So if I could swim, I would choose snorkeling. But I can't swim. So I would choose my ruin. Yeah, but honestly, yeah, but I kind of want to give it to snorkeling. I've never done it. But the sea, despite not being able to swim, I have quite an affinity for like the nautical, which is why I like, you're a captain, you are a captain, right? So, I love nautical stuff. And so I wish I could swim. That's why when I was in the waterfall with Russell, I was in a floaty because I couldn't swim.
What are some upcoming projects that we can expect from you?
So I'm glad you asked that. So on February 12th of this year, we're having a concert, a night of ballads and blues. So this is for the lovers. You bring your partner, you hold them so close and so tight, and you listen to the beautiful voice of Katie Martucci. She's an amazing vocalist from Brooklyn, New York. She's coming with Josh Dunn, an amazing guitar player, as well as Nathan's coming back on sax, with my trio. And so this is going to be a big event compared to the last concert. This one will be focusing heavy on vocals. In the past, I focused a lot on just instrumental music, but this time I really want to, every concert I'm bringing like a new idea with it. And I don't have any set dates later this year, but I'm hoping to bring back Russell Hall. I might reach out to Pasquale Grasso. He's my guitar teacher. He used to play guitar for Samara Joe as well, and I take lessons from him regularly. But in the past months, I haven't because just some things I've been working on. But I hope I could bring him. I've asked him, and he said he's willing to come. I guess we just need to work out the details. I might bring back Ryan and some surprise guests. And so, yeah, just February 12th is that big concert.
And where can the people find you when it comes to, booking gigs or seeing what it is that you're up to?
Yeah, so I kind of have two social medias. But on Instagram, my personal one is jazzman.bz. Honestly, I just picked that handle when I was 19. I had nothing else to cut. I like jazz, so jazzman, easy as Belize. But so now it's so weird because now I'll interact with people from the States and like Russell, I'll join his live streams and it's so funny, like you have all of these people who are much better jazzmen. And look at this guy from Belize with the handle saying jazzman. Sometimes he calls me Yardman. So kind of funny.
That's a good one.
Yardman.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of more Yardman than jazzman, in a funny type of way. So Jazzman.bz, that's my personal account. I share just stuff there. But there's also Jazz Belize on Instagram, where I just exclusively share stuff relating to the band.
And that brings us to the end of our episode. A special thank you to Loreto Pelayo for making his way onto the Captain 501 broadcast. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. If you guys want the video portions, they're available up on YouTube. And if you want the audios, they're available up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Be sure to check us out on all our different social media. Check out Loreto on all of his different social media. And we will see you guys in the next episode.